Minister Nathi Mthethwa has confirmed that hundreds of athletes from across the country have received COVID-19 funding, but he's also noted with concern that a large number of applications from artists have been rejected, citing missing documents or not enough information as some of the reasons for the rejection. To talk to me now about the plight of artists during the lockdown and challenges in accessing the relief fund is the president of the South African Guild of Actors, Jack Devnarain. Jack, it's good to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
Look at those numbers, 1,050 applications according to the minister, but 1,500 actually getting to the hands of the adjudicators. 806 of those in essence have been rejected, even though one would say 203 of those are still waiting to be approved. I mean, does this give you a sense in any way that the plight of the creative sector is understood by this department?
I don't think so at all. In fact, to illustrate my point, I'll refer you once more to the address by the minister earlier today, where he said, from the sporting side, they are able to work with a number of federations. They represent the athletes in various different codes of sport. But in the arts and culture side, there are no such federations. So they're having difficulty in getting a hold of a lot of performance. At which point exactly did the minister figure this out? This is something that I would really like to know, because was this apparent at the time that that sports became part of his mandate? The industry has functioned in a particular way based on freelance work. The minister mentioned again in his statement this morning that one of the criteria for qualification for funding is that you must be able to prove through a letter or some sort of contract that the event you were booked on was in fact cancelled. The minister went on to say that, but that's not how the industry works. Of course, it's not how the industry works. You are not likely to get a cancellation letter because a lot of productions were waiting with an indefinite postponement, hoping that after a certain period of time, we can get back into it. That has not happened. So the criteria that the minister had himself set was difficult in order for a number of performers to qualify and therefore to receive funding. We don't know what the minister knows or doesn't know at this point.
Talk to us about that understanding that the minister has, saying, well, things seemingly went smooth sailing for athletes. They've got federations. We know how many of them are there. They applied through these federations. We were able to distribute a good 293 as we speak right now out of the 300 applications that they received. Even though the minister knows that the creative sector is going to be the hardest hit by this pandemic, first and foremost, was this information communicated broadly enough to the artists? And what do you make of the deadline itself, which was made for the 6th of April?
The minister acknowledged, even in his address today, that the deadline that was set presented a window of opportunity that was simply not sufficient. He also added to that by saying that because it was held over a weekend, a number of people were not able to access the kind of data and the ICT services that they needed in order to deliver the documents that were necessary. So the minister knows very well that one of the limitations to accessing the funding was in fact established by his ministry, by the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. We are also not a sporting department. So traditionally, you've always had young athletes who would be joining a club, the clubs would join a federation, the federation would link into a national body. In our industry, as performers, there is no club to join in. There is no acting club, film club. No, there isn't an animation club you can join in. No, you are an independent contractor. You're a freelancer. You'll be coming up by learning your craft. Sometimes in tertiary institutions, sometimes within community theatre groups. Amateur groups are very, very active, and we are all delivering to what the industry should be. So to try and equate the two and to offer some kind of a comparative study is hugely misleading, and I think points to the failure of the department to be in enough contact with the industry to actually find out how many people are actively working within the sector.
We've clearly outlined the challenges. The first one, Jack, that you're pointing out is the criteria itself. You're saying that needs to be looked at. The minister mentioned some technical admin glitches, which he says hopefully they've gotten over those and they are now sorted. He is now looking at opening up for proposal for live streaming. How do they get that right? Considering, of course, the first phase of this was terribly mishandled.
We don't know exactly what he was referring to. I can listen to his presentation over and over again, and I still can't work out what it was intended to achieve. For example, the reference to the live streaming service, to my mind, is a reference to the attempt to commission independent producers to start producing content that might help people to educate themselves and to understand what the virus is all about, what the pandemic is, how it's defined, how it's spread, and how to avoid it. To me, I understand that it was his way of saying we are commissioning new content, and this content must include South African producers and talent. And so I'm hoping that this is something that's going to be rolled out. I personally don't know of any producer who is involved in that way, but I'm certain that the department will have identified those people and that they are proceeding with that plan.
So he's using this to say, even before COVID-19, there's always been this cry that there's not enough local content on our platforms, television, wherever, and radio, and saying this fund gives an opportunity, one, as you're putting it, for independent producers to use local talent, but not only that, for some kind of collaborative effort between the young ones and the legends, which is what he says, but then also in that same vein, kind of creating some kind of platform for people to be earning a living at this time. But then again, putting some rather stringent regulations as to what needs to happen, right? Can't be in a catering space, you must sanitize the rooms, it must happen within the curfew, the number of people on set, and so on and so forth. I mean, how does that play out in your mind?
These are all essential safety protocols, and there are a number of conversations taking place right now. Some organizations within the industry, including SAGA, the South African Communications Industries Association, as well as SASFED, the South African Screen Federation, are two such organizations that have drafted comprehensive safety protocols in order to try and ensure that cast and technical crew, anybody who's going to be working on that floor, working in studio, will at least be able to rely on some minimum safety standards in order to protect the industry as we try to get back to work.
It's a question of, Jack, creating work, but at the same time making sure that those artists are safe. And I've seen some conversations going on online to say, what insurance is going to be there for these artists? Are insurers actually going to be happy with artists actually working in these type of environments?
Any environment that's going to create a situation where producers, actors are likely to claim is going to make an insurer extremely nervous. I don't think they like the idea at all, but they cannot escape the fact that they are part of the value chain when it comes to our industry. You are not going to get away from that. They need to be part of the discussion, and so that will be taking place.
Jack, appreciate your time. Thanks for talking to us today. That is the president of the South African Guild of Actors, Jack Devnarain. When we come